It was terribly cold and nearly dark on the last evening of the old year, and the snow was falling fast. In the cold and the darkness, a poor little girl with bare head and naked feet roamed by herself through the streets. It is true she had on a pair of slippers when she left home, but they were not of much use to her. They were very large, so large indeed, that they had belonged to her mother, and the poor little girl had lost them when running across the street to avoid two carriages that were rolling along at a terribly fast speed. One of the slippers she could not find, and a boy stole the other and ran away with it, saying that he could use it as a cradle when he had children of his own someday. So the little girl walked on with her little naked feet, which were already quite red and blue from the cold. In an old apron, she carried a number of matches and held a bundle of them in her hands. No one had bought anything from her the whole day, nor had anyone given her even so much as a penny. Shivering with cold and hunger, she crept along. Poor little child, she was the picture of misery. The snowflakes fell down on her long fair hair, which hung in curls upon her shoulders, but she paid no attention to them. Lights were shining out from every window, and there was a delicious smell of roast goose in the air, for it was New Year's Eve. Yes, she remembered that. In a corner, between two houses, one of which extended out beyond the other, she sat down and huddled herself together. She had drawn her little feet under her, but she could not keep out the cold. And she dared not go home, because she had sold no matches that day, and could not take home even a penny of money. Her father would certainly beat her. Besides, it was almost as cold at home as here, since they had only the roof to cover them, through which the wind whistled and howled, although the largest holes had been stopped up with straw and rags. Now her little hands were almost frozen with the cold. Ah, perhaps a burning match might be some good, if she could take it from the bundle and strike it against the wall, just to warm her fingers. She pulled one out, and scratch! Oh, how it sputtered as it burned. It gave a warm, bright light, like a little candle, as she held her hand over it. It was truly a wonderful light. It seemed to the little girl that she was sitting next to a large iron stove with polished brass feet and a shiny brass ornament. How the fire burned, and seemed so beautifully warm that the child stretched out her feet as if to warm them, when, lo! The flame of the match went out, the stove disappeared, and she had only the remains of the half-burnt match in her hand. She rubbed another match on the wall. It burst into a flame, and where the light fell upon the wall, it became as transparent as a veil, and she could see right into the room. The table was covered with a snowy white tablecloth, on which stood a marvelous dinner service and a steaming roast goose stuffed with delicious apples and dried plums. And what was even more wonderful, the goose jumped down from the dish and waddled across the floor, with a knife and fork in its breast, over to the little girl. Then the match went out, and there was nothing but the thick, damp, cold wall next to her. She lighted another match, and then she found herself sitting under a beautiful Christmas tree. It was even larger and more magically decorated than the one which she had seen through the glass door at the rich merchant's. Thousands of tiny candles were burning upon the green branches, and colored pictures, like those she had seen in the shop windows, looked down upon it all, The little one stretched out her hand towards them, and the match went out. The Christmas lights rose up higher and higher, till they looked to her like the stars in the sky. Then she saw a star fall, leaving behind it a bright streak of fire. Someone is dying, thought the little girl, since her old grandmother, the only one who had ever loved her, and who was now dead, had told her that when a star falls, this meant that a soul was going up to be with God. She again rubbed a match on the wall, and the light shone round her. There, in the brightness, stood her old grandmother, clear and shining, yet gentle and loving in her appearance. "Grandmother," cried the little one, "oh, take me with you. I know you will go away when the match burns out. You will disappear like the warm stove, the roast goose, and the large, beautiful Christmas tree." And quickly she lighted the whole bundle of matches, as she so wished to keep her grandmother there with her. And the matches glowed with a light that was even brighter than the midday sun. And her grandmother had never before appeared so large or so beautiful. She picked up the little girl in her arms, holding her close, and together they flew upwards in brightness and joy far above the earth, where there was neither cold nor hunger nor pain, for now they were with God. Early the next morning, there lay the poor little one, with pale cheeks and a smiling mouth, leaning up against the wall. She had been frozen to death on the last evening of the year, and the New Year's sun rose and shone down upon her little body. The child still sat there in the stiffness of death, clutching the matches in her hand, one bundle of which was burnt. She tried to warm herself, said some people standing near her. No one imagined what beautiful things she had seen, nor into what glory she had entered with her grandmother on that New Year's Day.